So our keynote topic this year is the 3 circles of digital care. And just to set the stage for everybody, what we're talking about is that, as John's story pointed out, long-term success in the world of digital, it requires a careful balance between employee health, organizational goals, and project requirements. So what we're going to talk about today, and the panelists are going to hopefully answer some great questions about. Our questions focus on the intersection of these 3. The intersection of self-care, caring for others, so employees and coworkers, and then caring about the work that you're doing, what the goal of your organization is, and how that, to make sure everybody is successful, these have to be in a careful balance, and that everyone has to have a priority. So just to introduce our panelists today, we have Dori Kelner. She has a unique perspective in the tech industry, working as a woman in tech for many decades, as well as living the entrepreneurial lifestyle. She has served for over 15 years as managing partner of Sleight of Hand Studios, a Drupal agency in the Washington, D.C. area. She assists her clients in creating solid strategic visions for their web presence. And Dori recently founded Insightful Culture, a firm committed to assisting companies and individuals to find a mindful approach to leadership. She serves as on the planning teams for and has spoken at DrupalCon and DrupalGovCon. Dori, thank you for coming. Next, we have Matt Westgate from Lullabot. He is the CEO and co-founder. He's been an active member and supporter of the Drupal community from the beginning. He's credited with over 600 commits in the last 15 years to Drupal. It's a lot of commits. Matt is also co-authored the best-selling Drupal book, Pro Drupal Development. Today, he's the CEO and co-founder of Lullabot, a 60-person strategy, design, and Drupal development company whose client list includes IBM, SpaceX, This Old House, Harvard, and MIT. Matt, thank you for joining us. And finally, we have J.D. Flynn, who is a technical architect at Genuine. After a decade-long career in emergency services as a paramedic, J.D. made the jump from ambulance driver to text editor. J.D. is a Drupal architect for Genuine out of our Chicago office, and he's active in the Drupal community by helping organize MidCamp and is co-organizer of the Drupal Chicago Meetup group. As someone with mental illness who's not afraid to talk about it, J.D. has presented on the topic of mental illness in the tech community to local user groups, regional conferences, and national level events at locations such as MIT, UC Berkeley, Washington State Convention Center, Guaranteed Rate Field, and DePaul University. J.D., thank you for joining us. So now, while I do have some questions prepped to start the conversation going, I encourage everybody here to submit questions as they come to your head. I have them ready so that I can see the questions you want to ask. If you want to do it IRL, you can raise your hand and John will run around and he can use the microphone. But if these are personal topics, if you don't want to speak out loud, we do have a form that you can fill out. Simple one question form where you can ask your question. It'll show up on my screen, and then I can ask the panelists that. So if you go to bit.ly/nedqa 2019, that's the form where you can fill out, and I have it in the corner of every slide. So with that, let's get started. I will pick at random Matt to start this one. So, Matt, why is it important that the needs of individuals, organizations, and projects are balanced?
Needs, organizations, and individuals. I also grew my hair out since last night I put the slide together. I hope you like it. Well, I don't know. I think of John's story, and I think that's the sort of the most compelling reason is that you can live to work or work to live. And a lot of us, the Drupal community has been around for how many years? 18 plus years. I mean, we started, and many of us didn't have families, or we were still in college, and as it's grown up, and as we've grown up, we don't want to leave Drupal, we want to stay in Drupal, and so I think we've also looked for more sustainable relationships along the way. We've seen the whole business industry come up, being able, we all have jobs that we get to participate in open source with, and that's really awesome and compelling. But a lot of the businesses around Drupal are things like client services and agency work and stuff like that. And a lot of that comes down to relationships. We want to have fun at the work that we do. I mean, 40 hours of work, 40 hours a week of work doing something that takes your, chips away at your soul is a big chunk of time. And so, I think it's important to enjoy the work that you do on all levels. And you can also argue it's good for business. It depends on the kind of business that you're in, the knowledge work requires someone's passion and leadership and insights, and you can't get that. That's not something you can require from someone. You can create an environment to facilitate that, but that's about as far as you can go to nurture that.
So going off that point about creating that environment, Dori, I know from the work you do, you focus on helping cultures build that sort of environment. So what do you see as a healthy environment for employees and organizations?
So organizations traditionally have been about pushing people as hard as they can. So their job is to push. How much can I get out of each person? And that we've seen productivity tied to that. We need to have the highest productivity possible in order to make the most money possible. And that's just not true. We need to have a place where people feel they can thrive and feel safe and comfortable and grow. And so when we look at what people need to feel resilient and what organizations need from their employees in order to make their bottom line, we see three things emerge. One is that employees need to feel like they're in control of their day. Not to be micromanaged, not to be pressured, not to be given work that they're going to fail at. And they need to feel a commitment to the organization. So the organization needs to bring to them, this is where you fit in. This is where you're helping us. This is where we need you. And you have to have that buy-in. It has to be two ways. And then there's the element of challenge. So is somebody going to see a problem as fear? I'm not going to be able to do that. Look at all this work on my desk. Or are you creating an environment in which people feel challenged? So, what can I do here? What can I do to actually get through that work? Are there other people in the organization that I can feel free and safe to go to help me? Can I even ask for help? Can I ask for that time off that John just told us about? That story moved me to tears. We need to recognize that these three factors in any individual makes people more resilient. And at the same time, those three factors make us a productive organization. So creating this environment where that's encouraged, where we can communicate and feel safe and feel in control and feel like we can grow, all contribute to having both things, the organization getting what it needs and the individual getting what they need.
J.D., I want to ask you, based on your position, what does that sort of environment look like to you that you've seen over your career that is a safe place where employees can feel challenged and safe?
Well, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen the environment where you don't feel safe, you may feel challenged, but it's a scary challenge, like do this or you don't have a job, holding that over your head. I've also seen the environments where, hey, we've got a fun new thing. Do you want to learn this? Do you want a chance to do this? Go ahead and ask questions. Use whatever resources and take your time to make sure that it's done right. And I'm at one of those jobs now, and I'm not at the other one. There's a reason. And it's not just because I work for the guy who's at the mic there. I think in the jobs that I've been empowered to actually learn things, that I have coworkers who I feel like I can ask questions to, who won't insult me for asking those questions. Because some developers don't have the best social skills. This may come as a surprise. And especially working in a place where most of the communication is text-based, it's hard to convey emotion that way. So even if that person didn't mean to say, what were you thinking, in the way that they said it, and they instead meant to say, hey, why did you do it this way? Help me understand your process. Having the people around that I know they're not doing it the negative way, they're doing it the positive way, and they're willing to help me really helps build that culture. And to be able to go to higher ups and say, hey, I have an issue, I'm having problems, what resources are available? And it's great to be in a position now where I do feel comfortable.
Can I do a quick anecdote
Yes,
on that?
of course.
So let's go back to 2007, Drupal in 2007. Who remembers Drupal in 2007? Oh, wow, it's a good crowd. Back in my day. No, 2007, we were working on probably one of the first biggest Drupal websites. It was mtv.co.uk. Remember that, Jeff? And Angie Byron was working with us, and we had brought Dries in on the project because we needed to launch it, get out the door. We're having some performance issues, but we got it out. Hooray! Celebrate! And I don't know, maybe an hour or two goes by, and we get the phone call from our stakeholder, and he's pretty upset, and he says, We've got a really big issue. And pull the site up in the back. What do you mean? Everything's, good. And he says, our lawyer just logged into the website, and when he went to edit his profile, it told him that he was a 14-year-old girl. Wait, oh dear. We had an off by one error on the database migration. So user 1 was number 2, user 2 was number 3. And so we got on the phone, I got the team together, and Angie Byron, web chick, was responsible. She gave me permission to tell the story. She said, oh, that was me, oh my God. We're thinking, like Lullabot just started, we're going to get shut down. We can't handle a lawsuit. Like, this is game over for us. And so she, works on it, and she figures it out, and we get the thing out there, and she's in tears, and she says, I'm so sorry. This is going to cost me my job. And we said to her, we said, listen, like, you got this. If anybody can fix this, it's you. Because you know the system more than anybody else. More so than that, congratulations, you're getting a raise. You are a resident database migration expert. Because nobody, that mistake's not going to happen again, or it's not. So instead of letting her go, we lifted her up. And you can only do that in a culture where you feel safe enough to own your mistakes, and those are the kind of experiences that you're missing. And the whole underlying thing there is the concept of psychological safety. And it's something we've been working on for a while. We've still got work to do, but it's the concept. I saw it put together by Amy Edmondson, and she says you will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with your thoughts, ideas, questions, or concerns. But in order to do that, the person receiving the message has to set aside their ego and listen and open up and be vulnerable as well. And it's terribly difficult to do, but those are the kind of experiences that you get. You can create relationships for life that way.
That sounds like you had a really supportive culture from the beginning, which, it's very important. With that, something you said, psychological safety in your culture. This comes from an audience question that I'm going to direct towards JD. Sort of related to that, until you're in an organization, you're not going to know that culture is there. And related to mental illness, JD, when looking for a new job, at what point do you disclose mental illness, especially when it can impact your work?
Well, I'm kind of an interesting party to that question, because if any potential employer were to Google my name, the first 15 results are probably going to be videos of me telling how I have mental illness at various conferences. So, in recent positions, it hasn't really come up, and if it has come up, it's been, hey, I've seen your talk, I know what's going on, what can we do here? And that's in the interview stages. It's before even getting to the point where I accept or have an offer letter. In places that haven't done that, I try to be forthcoming when it happens, or if I need to be, but I don't necessarily walk in the door and say, hey, my brain isn't normal, so beware. I just kind of get a feel for the culture, and I think a lot of people have to do this. If it happens after being hired, you have to get a feel for the culture afterwards, and if it's someplace that you feel safe, then you feel safe. If it's someplace you don't, then you're probably sending out your resume on Indeed as quickly as you can and saying, hey, it's just not a fit.
With that culture fit, Dori, from your work, and it may be related to your work, how can a organization start building that sort of culture and promoting it?
So the biggest, the quickest win that you can have is to change the culture of your meetings, surprisingly. We all go into meetings where all we're doing is reporting out information. And there's somebody higher up who's the facilitator, and everybody else is listening, and they're going around the table, and we're saying, here's our status, here's our status. That can be done on email. Okay? So what's a meeting really for? And it's for a team to come together and share ideas. So it gives you the opportunity to, number one, create a culture of check-in. So if everybody can check in at this meeting, we understand where they're coming from that day. Are they having a good day? Are they having a problem at home? What is their mental mindset for the day? So that we can show compassion. We don't, necessarily have to beat up on them. So we understand where their words are coming from when they speak to us. And then to allow people, as was just said, to have the psychological safety to speak up and contribute ideas. One idea that somebody comes up with might then be talked about amongst the group and morphed into something. And that's okay. Every idea doesn't have to be perfect the moment it comes out of your mouth. So to be able to have this sense of comfort that we're a team. The whole point of being a team is to work together and come up with solutions that the organization needs. So that whole idea that we can work things, we can have different kinds of meetings, and that they don't all have to be this kind of presentation style thing, creates a group that can communicate better. So then you're working on communication skills, listening, evaluating, feeding back. And then finally, who's leading the meeting? Does the same person, does it always have to be a top-down thing? Like the project manager comes in and we run the meeting. That's very traditional. I did it for decades. But it's not necessary to do it that way. We can share that. We can even out the power of the room by allowing other people to lead on topics for which they have competency and grow their leadership skills at the same time. So while there's a whole lot of other things I would say we can do in the organization, bringing in programs and doing retreats and having resources and all those other good things, the one thing that we see time and time again that really starts to change the corporate culture is changing how we run our meetings.
Can I do a quick anecdote?
Your anecdotes are great, yeah, please do.
Thank you. I had a chance to see J.D. talk, and if you haven't listened to his talk, please do it. It's great, and he really shows a lot of courage and leadership. But I saw him talk about a year and a half ago at DrupalCon and was blown away by the presentation. So much so that I came back to my company and I said, hey, there's a thing that's likely happening that we're not talking about. The statistics around mental health are particularly alarming. I think it's 1 in 5.
The average, the general public in the US, the average is about 17 to 18% of any adult will have some form of mental illness in the span of a year. And based on the surveys that OSME, or Consortium of Mental Illness, nonprofit I volunteer with, we do surveys yearly, but the biggest one we did showed that there is approximately a 50-50 in the tech community. 50% of people have either a diagnosis or that they think they have mental illness. And that's from a sample size of about close to 2,000 people, so it's not huge, but it's also not small. So it is significant in our community.
So we got those, I was listening to those statistics from J.D., and so I went back to our team and I said, listen, as leadership, we checked the box off, health insurance, all right, that's all good, but like, are we really doing enough? And so I put a call out, and Marissa was one of the people amongst, I don't know, 6 or 7 others that jumped in. We just started talking, and the first thing that we did was we asked our team. Marissa put together an anonymous survey to say, hey, basically, is our insurance doing enough? Are we doing enough? What could we be doing more to support you? And it's been a long process. That was a year ago, and we're still figuring out. But we do know there are gaps. There are places where our health insurance falls short. There's other things that we can do, mental health first aid, making sure managers know how to understand and respond to mental health situations. And so, part of it's just if you come from a place of having trust within your organization, you can actually turn to your organization and say, am I supporting you? Is what we're doing enough, or do we need to be doing more?
So to add to that, the statistics that JD just gave us are alarming enough. But there's also things that we haven't traditionally looked at as mental illness. And the biggest one there is burnout. The World Health Organization declared burnout an occupational phenomenon back in May. So now we're even adding to that group of people who are struggling in different ways. We're starting to recognize that, I believe the number is 70%, 7 in 10 millennials are experiencing burnout in the workplace. That's an extraordinary number. So when you're listening to these statistics and going, well, I don't have that. I don't have a mental illness. I don't have friends with mental illness. Start to expand your perception of what that means. And when you see people struggling, yes, maybe they have what the current medical community is calling illness, and maybe there's other things at play here. And how can we as organizations, what are we contributing to that? And how are we making people who have medical conditions feel worse? And how are we making people how are we tamping down everyone else? Because we're not, it's not just a medical situation that we're talking about at this point. We're expanding what that definition means, and that's truly important to recognize.
And the last one, the other thing is,
Please keep them coming. Please.
what we can do as a community for burnout. Like, one easy thing that we can do is respect people's boundaries. Like, when they say no, don't push them. When they need to tap out, let them tap out. Nobody's consumable fuel for a cause.
Now, there's one thing that keeps, at least I'm hearing, maybe I'm forcing a pattern, but a lot of this is looking from the top down. And there's a conversation at Twin City Drupal Camp that we had. They did an unconference session or day, which was really good. But we had a roundtable, and the question came up, but who looks out for management? Who looks out for the higher ups? And I think a lot of that is baked into the culture. And if the culture of a company or an organization is the kind where you feel comfortable enough to, you know, walk up and say, Matt, you doing okay? Is there anything that you need? You know, or that's pretty important too, because, you know, the people at the top, they suffer from the exact same things that those of us who don't have the fancy titles do. They are people too. So, you know, we're all humans, so we all need to look out for each other, regardless of what our title is or what our position may be. And part of that is making sure that the culture of the company allows you to be on the same level as the people who are above you. And if you're in a company where your boss separates himself in an ivory tower and never comes out, never talks with you, never has lunch with you, then you're probably not going to be able to recognize those signs with that boss. But if you're in a company where the boss says, hey, how's everybody doing today, then you're probably going to be able to recognize that, and you can say, listen, something hasn't been the same with you, what do you need? And it takes a lot from both sides. I mean, how many people right now are comfortable going up to their boss and saying, are you okay? Not quite the entire room, but a good portion, so that's good. That's good. You're all working in good cultures. The rest might want to talk to somebody in the company and say, hey, how can we work on this culture? But you know, everybody's a person, everybody's human, and we all have our issues regardless of what initials are behind our names.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit more, JD, and I'm going to open this up to any of the panelists to answer, because everybody here in the work we do, you know, we have some sort of client, and I think a lot of us interact with clients through tickets, right? We don't see them as people, and we forget that clients in the work we do are for other people. So what's the importance of remembering that the work you're doing is for other people, and how do you incorporate that into your culture?
I think that when you have created a culture of compassion, that expands to everyone. And a lot of these are communication skills, and I want to say loving kindness skills. Getting people to recognize each other as human, learning to be self-aware. What are you doing and how does it affect the people around me? That will trickle down into your projects. That will move around the organization. So when we create leadership programs in an organization, when we create a mindful leadership program, it's not about having somebody learn how to meditate. That might be a tool, but it's not about that. It's about how do we infuse the culture with this self-awareness? And it has to come from top down. It has to. The organization has to be bought into this. It's important for our employees to feel self-aware. It's going to improve the organization. And yes, we're talking about a lot of soft skill stuff here, but we all need to make money, right? We need our paychecks. They need their profits. That's a reality. We're not going to sacrifice that. But there is a way to make all that work. And so when the management of the organization has decided that our leaders are going to be compassionate leaders, they're going to be servant leaders, they're going to be mindful leaders, and then the rest of the organization is allowed the psychological safety. They learn skills for communicating with each other. They learn how they impact other people. Those other people include the projects and includes the clients. I know that for me, clients are my biggest trigger. I mean, I get them all. I get the clients who go, no matter what I do, say, thank you, we're so grateful you're here. And I'm like, I really didn't do much to deserve that, but I'll take it. And then I've got the clients who I go to my partner, this one's yours. I just can't. So understanding that we're all human, that sometimes our limits are here and some our limits are down here, and to recognize and go to ourselves, that's okay. Sometimes I don't have it in me. I don't have the resources in me to deal right now. But that's self-awareness. And when you're that way, then you can start to see your clients that way as well. And start to say, I need to take a pause here and see what's coming from them. I need to take a pause here and see what my coworkers need. I can't just jump in and start doing or reacting. So having this culture of mindful leadership, I think really then extends all the way into projects and into this sort of compassionate workplace that we all really want to have, and is still can be extremely profitable. When people are happy in what they do and they show up at work every day, and illness goes down and turnover goes down, everybody wins.
Leading off from that, and Matt, I want to ask this to you because it goes to your earlier anecdote. Bringing it from top down, 100% agree, it's totally important. We also want the people going from the bottom up, individuals, to know what to do. And Matt, your anecdote earlier about MTV, the client, I'm not saying you did this, but the client response say, what's going on? The website's broken. And your response is, what do you mean? It looks great. Not that was defensive, but I, from experience, think that it's easy to be defensive against clients when they report things back. What's something people can do to stop being defensive like that and then be more collaborative with clients when those situations arise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm still working on it. There was this, I'll come back around to this, but there was this agency that I knew, and their hosting provider, every time their hosting provider went down, and it didn't go down often, but when it did, they had a culture where they would send them donuts. They would deliver donuts to the office location of the hosting provider because they were trying to, be human, right? Show a culture of empathy, because when the hosting site, or when the hosting goes down, like those people they get beat up left and right trying to bring things back online. The hosting company was Linode, and they recently moved into a new office. And when you go in, it was an old bank that's been restored, and you go in, the first thing you see is their customer service center. They put the people that are handling all the tech support tickets first in the fanciest office, in the biggest space with the glass ceiling, because they're making a statement, right? Like their people are our most important things inside and outside the organization. But the way it's sort of like you build up points, right? I get dad points, I get husband points for doing things, and I keep pretty good track of those, so I know how I'm doing. You get points with your clients too, and that starts at the very beginning of the relationship. So, like Dori's saying, there's different ways to start a meeting. There's jumping in, getting very specific, but there's also like, hey, oh my God, how was your weekend? What did you do? And like you start to make things human, personal, build up those connections, have like little fun memes in your project, or things that you do, or just ways to get to know each other, or just, you're saying people are tickets, and we see that in the day-to-day grind, but also maybe when we start thinking people are tickets, it's time to go to their office, it's time to say, listen, we need to reconnect on a different level. Just the same way, like in a relationship or marriage, you say, hey, I think it's time for us to go on a vacation, and like you have team retreats, but team retreats aren't always to work on the work. Team retreats are also to like, all right, how are you? Tell me about you, because like, man, we've just been going nonstop. So let's have some fun, and let's build up that. The points to keep, so when things get aground, we have something to remember and help us pull through.
JD, do you have anything that you do to help with that sort of daily grind and remembering that the people on the other side of tickets are indeed people and are dealing with things?
I should. I think one of the hardest things for any of us as developers is realizing that there's a person on the other end of that ticket. And even though we may look at that ticket and say, oh, it's just a 5-minute fix, what's the big deal? Why did they put a major? For them as a stakeholder, as this being their livelihood, it is a big deal. And, for us, it might just be changing a setting in the back end, but for them, it's potentially, thousands, if not more, of dollars going down the drain because they can't do what they need to do. So we need to be aware of how the client stakeholder might be feeling, what's actually going through their head when they put in this ticket, because there's going to be a reason. I'm fortunate that I work with a dream client who we have a call with him every week, and it's not just the PMs on the call, it's everybody on the team, and we have a conversation, we go through tickets together, we room it all together, and I hope that someday all of you get to work with this kind of client, but not mine because he's mine and I'm not and he doesn't say you're going to do this. He looks at it as a partnership. Like, how can we achieve this together? And even on the tickets, I need your feedback. Here's what I think we should do, but I leave it to you because we obviously hired you for a reason. How should we proceed on this? And that's amazing. Having that kind of relationship with a client is something that I honestly never saw coming. And he also knows boundaries too. He has my personal cell phone number because
that's real trust with the client.
Well, he was running into a pretty scary issue, and the phones in the office weren't working. So I'm like, okay, let's just talk this over, and got through it. Had it fixed within 30 seconds. But he also knows that he's not going to call me on a Sunday and say, hey, by the way, I was wondering how can I update this web form. And if I saw his number ring on a Sunday, straight to voicemail, and I was on probably Monday around 9:30. But he's a person. All of our clients are people, and they hired our companies for a reason to do the work. So they're not coming at you with vengeance. They're not just out to get you, out to make your lives miserable. They obviously saw something in your company that they liked in order to hire you. Or even if you're a freelancer, they saw something in you that they liked. They're not just trying to give you tickets for the sake of getting tickets, because each one of those tasks is going to cost them money. So they probably don't like writing them any more than we like getting them. But you have to realize it is something that's very important to them, regardless of how big it is to us.
Yeah, just real quick, I totally agree with that. One of the things that I always say, and you really reminded me of this when you said, why did they, make the severity level so high? One of the things I always say is, well, it mattered to them. It mattered to them. There's always a different perspective that we can take. So when dealing with clients, you have to understand the perspective of the client. They hired us to do a job. They are entitled to change their mind. They're entitled to think something's a big deal that you don't think is a big deal. They're paying for the work. So have that perspective, have that understanding that, this matters to them. What can we do? What can we do to help?
So a question from the audience is that what are red, yellow, and green flags when interviewing to tell if a company is really good and it has a good environment versus just pretending to have one on their website? JD, you laugh, so you get to.
I was thinking actually of a conversation that we had last night after the dinner where somebody, Mike, are you here? Can I tell your story?
I don't know.
So he recommended, and if I'm misspeaking, too bad, I've got the mic, you don't. He helped get somebody placed in a job, but it turned out that that person basically was not allowed to talk at that job. He was very quiet, and if they started laughing or speaking too loud, just and that would have been a red flag if you could have seen that aspect of the company before being interviewed. Other red flags, just seeing, if you're getting the office tour and everybody's desk looks exactly the same because they're not allowed to have personal stuff, maybe that's just looking at you as more of a commodity than as a person. If you're going through and, just look at the demeanor of the people sitting around and their desks or cubicles or whatever, and if they all look absolutely miserable to be there, probably not the best place to jump into. But as for a green flag, if people are eager to meet you and say, hey, look, we're doing this awesome stuff, if they want to show off what they're doing, everybody you walk by says hello, they just seem overall happy to be there, that's probably a green flag, and it's probably going to be a better culture fit than the place that's going to shush you every time you get a funny meme.
Any other from the?
I'll just say, sometimes in the hiring process, I've seen potential employees ask to speak with other employees before they accept the job. And I thought that's a good idea, like to actually either they do it organically or they ask for 3 or 4 references from the employees themselves to see if what management has said to them is actually true and being lived out and expressed on a daily basis. I thought that was a nice or a neat way to do it.
I also think that look at the nature of the interview process. And if all that is happening is you taking tests and they're just checking, then you're a cop. Yeah. Oh, can they pass this test? That's all that matters. But if there's conversation, I totally agree with talking to other employees if you can. And if they don't let you talk to them, why?
That's a red flag.
Yeah. Why can't I talk to somebody who would be in my team? And the other thing is, and we haven't brought this up yet, look at the diversity of the organization. If the organization is very monolithic, if it's all the same kind of people of the same age, of the same gender, of the same nationality, what are they really looking for? That might be a yellow flag. I mean, I know I have a friend who's in an organization where there's 7 people, and you don't necessarily, she's the only woman. I mean, you don't necessarily, get everything you need all the time, but in a large organization, you should see things that make you feel like voices are going to be heard here.
There's one question that I tend to ask during interviews, and that's, how do you measure success? Asking as somebody being interviewing my interviewer, how do you measure success? And their answer could be a red flag. It's the number of Git commits that you push in a week. That's our KPI. That's probably not going to be a good fit unless you really like writing commits. And even if then, fix typo, comments. But if you get the answer, well, we measure success by how much our employees grow, how well they expand their skill set. If they feel that they are becoming better at what they do, better people, then that's how we measure success. That's probably going to be a good indicator that the culture is going to be accepting and better to work for than giving all the commits.
I had a niece that, I think that's a great one, is asking how they measure success. I had a niece that was looking for sort of career advice. She was trying to figure out which job to take, and she was worried about culture and being able to discern culture. And we always had a thing that culture is what the leadership does and what the leadership wants, not what leadership says. And so if you really want to look at what the organization is going to be like, you can go to their website and sort of see, you see their values and that sort of stuff, but you can really see how leadership behaves, what they do. If you can get any sort of sense of that, that's where you're going to get a sense of the culture. It comes from the top.
So full disclosure, I am JD's boss, and I did interview him, and he did ask that question. I don't remember what I said, but obviously I answered it correctly. So. I want to switch to another question from the audience, which I think is a really important one, so thank you whoever asked this. As we're talking about these three circles of self-care and caring about others, why must we care about what's going on in someone's personal life? How do we act compassion towards some coworkers when you really don't want to mix work with personal? Can't some coworkers live outside the circle where their personal life extends?
You don't have to, we're all familiar with the term personal bubble. If somebody doesn't want you within their personal bubble or circle of trust, then you can't force your way in there. It is everybody's decision if they want to be part of that or if they want to open up. You could try, you could say, hey, are you okay? Do you need to talk? But pushing it forward, that can probably get you sent to HR, which is a conversation nobody wants to have. So people are only as open to being friendly or open to being open as they want to be or as they feel comfortable with. So whatever you do, don't try to push somebody outside the comfort zone just to make yourself seem like being a better human, because that's really not. That's opposite of it.
Is there any reason why, must we as individuals care about that in the first place, about other people?
Because we're all people. That's the biggest thing. I mean, we're all decent people. I hope. I don't know all of you, but we're mostly all decent people, statistically speaking. And I think deep down, we all want to see each other rise. That's part of open source in general, is we're all pushing each other up. We're all helping each other. We're all doing things to make each other better people. We're here sharing knowledge. We're here talking to each other. We're networking. We're helping others find jobs. It's in our DNA, I'd like to say, but we want to see each other succeed.
So we don't work in a vacuum. We are working for an organization that has a mission, and if we feel committed to that mission, then we need to feel committed to the people we're working with. So I agree, you don't push if somebody wants to have their personal space, but then again, the safer you make the organization, the more you bring it into the culture. People can say pass. If you're at a meeting and everyone's like, okay, we're doing check-in, it's okay to say pass. After a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a year, that person might come out and contribute at the next meeting, and everyone's like, ah. But at least they know that the goal here isn't to pry into their lives. They don't have to, and they can pass, but the goal isn't to pry into their lives. It's to understand their human perspective at that particular moment in that particular meeting, or in this particular discussion, or in this email chain, or in this set of tickets, whatever that is. So it is important to see ourselves as a team working together towards the mission of the organization. And if you're uncomfortable with the interpersonal stuff, the question becomes, is it because you need a little more safety? That's fine. Or is the question the organization doesn't give anyone any safety? So those are two very different things.
Yeah, as the putting on the CEO hat, I'll say it's my job to care. Like that's what I'm supposed to do, I mean, our work, knowledge work is such that you need everybody's brains and voices and hearts engaged in the work. I mean, we're solving, it's not brain surgery, but these are complex problems that we're solving for people that hired us to do great work. Somebody once told Jeff and I that the day that we find firing someone easy is the day we need to quit our jobs. And I think that pretty much sums up the importance of why caring is necessary. It's your team. I mean, there's been times where I've had my ups and downs, and I've wanted to quit my job. Right? It's hard. And the thing that always brought me back was my team. My thinking about what we can accomplish together is so great much greater than what I could accomplish on my own. And so, JD's talking about some of that reciprocity, and that really is true. It can go both ways, but leadership has to lead first. They have to lead with vulnerability. They have to demonstrate, that what it's like to feel unsafe and what it's like to catch someone, when they are scared.
So, because we're at time, I want to leave it at that. But Dori, Matt, JD, I want to thank you for your insights. Let's give them a round of applause. And now we're going to do the group photo.